Hello! Spring has arrived, and that means it's the season for installing solar power plants. But not just solar power plants, because as you can see, this site already has a solar system installed. However, here will be installing energy storage batteries. But first, in order to install this storage system, we need to replace this inverter. Why are we replacing it? Because this inverter is not a hybrid model. To integrate battery storage into your system, you need a hybrid inverter. No, this is actually a good inverter. Huawei makes solid products, and there is nothing wrong with it. However, on this particular project, we are replacing it with a Sungrow inverter. Why Sungrow? Sungrow inverters come with a built-in automatic backup switch, which means you don't need any additional equipment to enable backup power. With Huawei hybrid inverters, if you want an automatic backup system, you need to install an extra switch box. So, in this case, Sungrow provides a simpler and more cost-effective solution. The next step? Here, the ceiling is already prepared, but we need to pull an additional cable. Right now, there is only one cable coming in. This cable powers the inverter, and at the same time, it sends power back through it. However, if you want to set up a backup system, you can't have power coming in and going back to the same cable. Otherwise, you could end up feeding electricity back into the grid and powering half of your neighborhood. This means hybrid inverter with backup functionality must be able to completely disconnect everything coming from the grid. Here is our inverter. And here are the documents. Everything is clearly explained in simple terms. Well, at least it's in English, so that's good. In the hybrid inverter kit, there is always a dynamic power controller which comes with the current transformers. These small devices help measure and manage the energy flow in the system. Connectors for DC cable connections. More connectors for additional DC cable connections. Screws to mount the inverter. Connectors for solar panel string connections. And a resistor. Not sure what it's for yet, but we'll check in the manual later. The inverter itself, as you can see, is quite large. Pretty big actually. 61 centimeters by 48 centimeters. It also comes with a dual connection setup. I can already imagine how difficult it will be for us to install it. Two 10 square millimeters cables will come here, one for input and one for output. We will need to arrange them neatly, bend them properly and connect them to the terminal. This component is still unclear in terms of its purpose. Oh, there is an RS485 communication cable. Below, I can also see another connector and a dynamic balancing connection.
Jungtis.
So, there is the dynamic power controller is also included in the kit. There is a connector for internet connection. I can see various mounting brackets at the bottom, which we will use to hang it. But before we can mount it, we first need to remove this Huawei inverter. So, as you can see, mounting the inverter was quite simple. There is a single mounting plate which is screwed into pre-installed anchors, and the inverter is then hung onto it. Here on the bottom there are support brackets to keep the inverter from tilting downward. Finally, additional screws are secured on both sides to ensure stability. Now our task is to remove this connector from the previous inverter and install this new connector in its place. A nice challenge ahead. We have now pulled a multi-stranded flexible cable which will make connecting the node terminal easier. However, after this we will still need to adjust and secure everything properly. As for the solar panel string, they will simply be connected to their designed slots without any issues. So, the inverter is now mounted and fully connected. So, we had to do some adjustments here because one of the incoming cables is a solid core 10 square millimeters wire, while the second cable is flexible. If you are planning to install a solar power system, especially with a hybrid inverter, it's crucial to know that the main power feed should pass through the inverter. This means that your main power cable, usually 10 square millimeters, should first go to the inverter and then from the inverter back to distribution panel. For this reason, it's best to use flexible cable as it is much easier to connect. Even the manufacturer has designed the system for flexible cable, including the necessary connectors, terminals, seals and other components in the kit. Next, we connect the Internet cable, which is used to link the inverter to the network. This allows us to monitor the system via the app and track how much energy it generates. Once we connect the batteries, we will also be able to monitor how much energy is being stored and track the overall performance of the storage system. Of course, here we have 3 connecting solar panel rings. Additionally, one conduit has been left in peace leading to the roof, where an extra 5 kilowatts of solar panels have already been installed. We will put their strings through this conduit and connect them here as well. There are also 2 outputs for battery storage, which we will discuss in the next part of the video. And now we are heading to the electrical panel. One great thing is that there is plenty of space in the electrical panel. There is an extra room here and even a whole row of free slots. We will be replacing the dynamic power controller in this setup. Here we will be working on the main power feed. We will directly connect the incoming power to the inverter, and the power returning from the inverter will be connected here as well. Additionally, we will install a few protective devices. We won't be showing the process itself, as we will need to disconnect the electricity. So, as you can see, the inverter is now connected and even powered on. Something is already running. However, before we can fully set it up, we need to connect it to internet, download the SunGrow app for configuration and monitoring. Here is the app, and now we are going to set up our solar power system. Since we removed the older inverter and installed a new one, we need to register it as a new device in the system. The app will automatically detect the device and once confirmed it should connect to the internet successfully. Next, we need to configure the device. From the list, we have to select our location, but since Lithuania is not listed, we choose over 50 Hz as the appropriate setting. Here, we can also set the power export limit if needed. Since the inverter was installed specifically to integrate battery storage with a backup function, we are keeping the backup mode enabled. And now, it looks like our device has been successfully configured. It configured itself automatically, so we didn't have to do much manually. Yes, the key aspect of hybrid inverters is that they are typically installed to connect battery storage and ensure that electricity remains available even during power outage. In this setup, two separate cables are needed from the electrical panel to inverter to properly manage power flow. One cable is used to power the inverter, while the second cable, which we installed today, returns electricity from the inverter. Additionally, the battery storage will be connected directly to the inverter, which we will cover in the next video. In our electrical panel, we connected the main power feed through the terminal block and used it to supply power to the circuit breaker. This circuit breaker is directly connected to the inverter. The power goes into the inverter and then returns through this transfer switch, which is connected at the bottom. This is a 3-position transfer switch. It functions similarly to a generator transfer switch, but we have added a bypass option. This allows us to disconnect the inverter from maintenance of serving without disrupting the power supply. By flipping the switch downwards, we bypass the inverter and power the house directly from the grid. At the same time, this disconnects the inverter, ensuring it has no voltage. This setup is essential for a proper and organized hybrid inverter installation, allowing you to easily integrate battery storage in the future. So that's it for now. Subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, write your comment, and we'll see you in the next video, where we'll be connecting the battery storage system on this project.